Every day, students all over the country studying for Step 1. Use BoardBuddy to log every question they get wrong. Over the last few days, we looked at 596 questions from 15 students, and together you missed 284 of them. So we pulled the 10 topics you struggled with the most, and we are going to explain all 10. Right now, our goal is simple: help you pass Step 1. Let's go. Alright, future doctors, let's tackle multiple myeloma, a plasma cell dyscrasia in older adults. You'll see CRAB criteria: hypercalcemia, renal insufficiency, anemia, and bone lytic lesions. Watch for rouleau formation and an M spike. Diagnosis needs 10% monoclonal plasma cells. But here's the ultimate trap: Bence-Jones proteins, Ig light chains, famously yield a negative urine dipstick because it only detects albumin. Don't miss this. Try this one. An 80-year-old man presents with persistent back pain, fatigue, and recent constipation. Labs reveal hypercalcemia, anemia, and an M spike on serum protein electrophoresis. A urinalysis is ordered, and you are reviewing the results. Which of the following findings is most consistent with the suspected diagnosis? The answer is A. Negative urine dipstick for protein. Multiple myeloma classically features Bence-Jones proteinuria, Ig light chains, which damage renal tubules. However, standard urine dipsticks only detect albumin, leading to a negative protein result despite significant light chain excretion. Multiple myeloma, Bence-Jones proteins, negative dipstick, albumin-only detection. Alright team, let's master mitral regurgitation. This systolic reflux from your left ventricle to left atrium gives a hollow systolic, high-pitched blowing murmur at the apex, radiating to the axilla. It intensifies with squatting and often presents with an S3 heart sound. Acute MR can follow a post-MI papillary muscle rupture. But your absolute highest yield point for Step 1. Remember, this left-sided murmur uniquely increases with expiration. Try this one. A 65-year-old man presents with progressive dyspnea and fatigue. On cardiac auscultation, a hollow systolic, high-pitched blowing murmur is noted. This murmur is loudest at the cardiac apex and significantly increases in intensity with expiration. Which of the following conditions is most consistent with these findings? The answer is A. Mitral regurgitation. The holosystolic, high-pitched blowing murmur at the apex, radiating to the axilla, points to mitral regurgitation. Crucially, left-sided murmurs, like MR, increase in intensity with expiration, distinguishing it from right-sided murmurs. Alright team, let's nail community-acquired pneumonia. Typical CFP, often S pneumonia, gives rusty sputum. Atypical walking pneumonia, usually mycoplasma, presents indolently, sometimes with cold agglutinins. Empiric treatment starts with azithromycin. But here's your biggest USMLE trap. With atypical CFP, your patient's mild presentation will often contrast sharply with a chest X-ray that looks far, far worse. Try this one. A young military recruit presents with a persistent, non-productive cough, mild headache, and malaise for several days. Physical exam reveals only mild crackles. A chest X-ray shows diffuse bilateral multifocal opacities concerning for severe interstitial pneumonia. The answer is A. The patient's clinical presentation will likely be much milder than suggested by the imaging. Atypical pneumonia, often caused by mycoplasma pneumoniae, is characterized by clinic or radiologic dissociation, meaning the chest X-ray appears much more severe than the patient's actual mild clinical presentation. Atypical pneumonia, CXR worse than patient. Alright team, let's talk hemochromatosis. This autosomal recessive HFE gene mutation means low hepcidin, causing unregulated iron absorption and accumulation in your tissues. Patients over 40 present with the classic triad, cirrhosis, secondary diabetes, and bronze skin bronze diabetes. Labs show elevated iron/ferritin, decreased TI, but the boards love this. On liver biopsy, the brown pigment uniquely stains blue with a Prussian blue stain. Don't confuse it with lipofuscin. Try this one. A 55-year-old man presents with progressive fatigue, joint pain, and darkening of his skin. Physical exam reveals hepatomegaly and bronze-colored skin. Labs show elevated serum iron and ferritin with a decreased TIBC. A liver biopsy is performed, revealing accumulation of a brown pigment within hepatocytes. The answer is A. Prussian blue. Liver biopsy confirms hemochromatosis by demonstrating brown pigment that uniquely stains blue with Prussian blue, distinguishing it from other pigments like lipofuscin. This is a common board trap. Prussian blue. Iron is blue. Alright team, let's talk pleural effusion, where excess fluid restricts lung expansion. Transidates are from pressure imbalances like heart failure. Exudates from increased vascular permeability, infection, or malignancy. You'll hear dullness to percussion, decreased tactile phreatus, and decreased breath sounds. The critical first step is a thoracentesis. But remember this crucial point. Always place your needle above the rib to protect the neurovascular bundle, never below the ninth rib. Try this one. A 55-year-old male with a history of congestive heart failure presents with worsening dyspnea and dullness to percussion over his left lung base. A chest X-ray confirms a large left-sided pleural effusion. The team decides to perform a thoracentesis. The answer is A. Immediately superior to the superior margin of the seventh rib. To avoid severing the intercostal neurovascular bundle, which runs along the inferior margin of each rib, the needle must be placed above the rib. Inserting below the ninth rib risks injuring abdominal structures. Thoracentesis, needle above the rib. When tackling antidepressants, remember they boost synaptic monoamines, but therapeutic effects take 4-8 weeks. SSRIs inhibit 5-HT reuptake, SNRIs and TCAs target both. Watch for trazodone's priapism or mirtazapine's weight gain. TCA overdose causes prolonged QT/QRS, MAOIs, hypertensive crisis. Serotonin syndrome shows clonus. But here's your crucial point. Never give bupropion to patients with anorexia nervosa or bulimia due to a dangerously high seizure risk. Try this one. A 24-year-old woman presents to her primary care physician with symptoms consistent with major depressive disorder. She reports difficulty sleeping, anhedonia, and persistent fatigue for the past 3 months. Her medical history is notable for bulimia nervosa, which has been in remission for 2 years. Which of the following antidepressants should be strictly avoided in this patient? The answer is A. Bupropion. Bupropion is strictly contraindicated in patients with a history of anorexia nervosa or bulimia due to a significantly increased risk of seizures. Bupropion plus eating disorder equals seizure danger. Alright team, let's talk vitamin B12 deficiency. Cobalamin is vital for DNA synthesis, so deficiency causes macrocytic RBCs and hypersegmented neutrophils. You'll see glossitis, reversible dementia, and critically, subacute combined degeneration. Deficiency takes years to develop due to liver reserves. Labs show elevated homocysteine and methylmalonic acid, but the single most common step 1 trap is mastering the crucial differences between B12 and folate deficiency. Don't get them confused. Try this one. A 68-year-old vegan presents with progressive gait instability, tingling in her feet, and fatigue. Initial labs reveal a macrocytic anemia, MCV 112FL. She is empirically started on folic acid, which corrects her anemia, but her neurological symptoms acutely worsen. What is the most appropriate next step in management? The answer is A. Initiate parenteral vitamin B12 supplementation. Giving folate to a B12 deficient patient corrects the megaloblastic anemia, but dangerously masks and worsens the neurological symptoms. Direct vitamin B12 supplementation is required to prevent progressive neurological damage. Folate masks B12 neurosymptoms. Check MMA. You're tackling cystic fibrosis, an autosomal recessive DILT F508 deletion in CFTR. This means misfolded chloride channels, leading to thick, dehydrated mucus. Look for meconium ileus, ABPA, and bilateral absence of the vas deferens. Diagnosis is by elevated sweat chloride, but the absolute highest yield trap involves pulmonary infections. Remember, Asorius dominates under 10 years old, while Pseudomonas takes over above 10. Master this. Try this one. A 7-year-old boy with a known history of cystic fibrosis presents with fever, cough, and dyspnea. Chest X-ray reveals a new infiltrate consistent with pneumonia. Which of the following is the most likely causative organism? The answer is A. Staphylococcus aureus. In cystic fibrosis patients under age 10, Staphylococcus aureus is the predominant cause of pneumonia, while Pseudomonas aeruginosa becomes more common after age 10. CF pneumonia. Is aureus dies. Pseudomonas dies. Meningitis is leptomeningeal inflammation. Patients present with headache, fever, and nuchal rigidity. A positive Kernig sign is key. For a child with a petechial rash, suspect N. Meningitis. Bacterial CSEF shows elevated PMNs and low glucose. Viral CSEF, lymphocytes and normal glucose. Always give empiric antibiotics before LP, but the highest yield trap, HSV2, causes viral meningitis, while HSV1 causes viral encephalitis affecting your temporal lobe. Try this one. A 45-year-old man presents to the emergency department with acute onset fever, headache, and confusion. His wife reports recent personality changes and difficulty speaking. On examination, he exhibits right-sided weakness and aphasia with an otherwise non-focal neurologic exam. A lumbar puncture is performed, revealing lymphocytic pleocytosis and normal glucose. The answer is A. Herpes simplex virus type 1 encephalitis. The patient's presentation with focal neurologic deficits, aphasia, and personality changes points to viral encephalitis affecting the temporal lobe, which is classically caused by HSV1. This differentiates it from HSV2, which causes viral meningitis. HSV1, encephalitis, temporal lobe, HSV2, meningitis. All right, team, let's nail DNA replication and repair. DNA synthesis always goes 5 to 3/3. Helicase unwinds, topoisomerases relieve supercoils. Defective NER causes xeroderma pigmentosum. MMR defects lead to Lynch syndrome. Homologous recombination defects are seen in Fanconi anemia and BRCA1/2 cancers. But the absolute highest yield point to remember is polymerase exonuclease activity, especially the crucial difference between DNA polymerase 3 and DNA polymerase 1. Master this distinction. Try this one. A young researcher is studying a novel bacterial strain with a unique DNA replication mechanism. She observes that a specific enzyme is responsible for removing RNA primers from newly synthesized DNA strands. Which of the following enzymatic activities is most likely utilized by this enzyme for primer removal? The answer is A. 5' 3 exonuclease activity. DNA polymerase. I, responsible for excising RNA primers in prokaryotes, uniquely utilizes a 5' This distinguishes it from DNA polymerase 3's 3' proofreading exonuclease. Pol I, 5' 3 exonuclease. Primer removal. Those were the 10 topics tripping up the most students over the last few days. If even a couple of these felt shaky, that is exactly what to review tonight. We do this every single day, straight from real Board Buddy data. So subscribe and come back tomorrow for the next 10. Keep going. You've got this.